All right, welcome to episode one slash the pilot episode of Undetermined Podcast Name.
Undetermined.
I'm your host, Clifford Janice.
And I am Thomas Knox. Thomas C. Knox, to be exact.
Thomas C. Max. This is, Thomas and I have been trying to figure out a way to work together on something for like years. How long has it been?
It's been at least
2006?
a good 5, 6 years. Definitely before I started DYUA, for sure.
Right. Late last year, I think kind of with everything going on with Black Lives Matter march, protest, and it's like this new reemergence of the Black experience. I told myself I kind of wanted to dedicate 2021 to focus on like Black media and Black entertainment. Watch Black movies, watch Black shows, past, present, and just get a unique feel or a new feeling for what the Black experience is and has been. I think growing up, like we had a lot of, I feel like we had a lot more Black shows like in the '90s, and they were, I guess, since we didn't have, I didn't have cable growing up initially until we got like the legal box. But growing up, we had the Mom, we had the Fresh Prince, we had Rock, we had Family Matters, we had Cosby Show, we had a lot of Black family shows, and then I feel like somewhere in the 2000s, it just kind of disappeared, and as more people had option of cable, they just kind of ventured into all the regular shows, all the popular shows, the reality shows. So, I wanted to, re-immerse myself in like the Black experience. We talked a bit about this general idea, and here we are.
It worked. I think for me, it was more so trying to find a better way to share content that would, give people, create feel good vibes for people. I think there's a lot of content out there, especially on platforms like Clubhouse and Instagram, where people are talking a lot about relationships and not always in a positive light. And I just was like saying to myself, I've never seen something like this. I've never seen these types of conversations happening where we look at our past and how it's impacted us going into our future and where we are currently. So, I'm really excited to be on and having this conversation, and hopefully this will be the first of many.
Yeah. And I like that you brought up thinking about like how we were influenced by like a lot of the shows we watched growing up. Because they were definitely feel good shows. They had morals, they had values. I feel like a lot of what's promoted in the Black space, I guess promote, like I know it exists. I know there's all type of content and media out there. Like it's very diverse because we have the option to kind of choose and watch whatever you want.
Right.
But I think the main focus isn't what we kind of grew up on, what the foundations and the experiences. They've kind of been watered down or just kind of focused on celebrities because that's just a bit of the norm. So we really want to look back at shows like I've been watching Martin. My fiance Erica and I have been watching Martin this past year. I watched One on One in its entirety. And just like reliving those experiences, but kind of just connecting, where I was as a kid and how it makes me feel, like seeing it again and re-experiencing these shows, and what were the influences on me and how I grew up and how I kind of experienced the Black experience. My family's from Haiti. So I'm a first generation American, so by default, I inherit the Black experience. So it's me learning and kind of seeing where I fit in. I feel alienated at times, but the experience is experience, right? Like you're here, you're Black, like this is it.
But also,
You
it's
gotta,
yours.
you gotta figure it out.
It's your experience.
Yeah.
We all have our own. Right? It's
Right.
different. And you bring up a good point. Like those are some of the shows I'm watching. Right, I watch a lot of Martin. Obviously, I talked to you about Fresh Prince. That can never go
Right.
wrong with some Will Smith.
Right.
So a lot of the I don't want to say the old shows, but a lot of shows that we watch growing up still have a ton of relevance to what's going on today and what's happening in our lives today. And that's something that I think we literally can use. I say it to people all the time. We don't have to repeat history. We can learn from history, and that's even from the shows and the movies that we watched. So I think that's a great point. And being Black in America, it hasn't changed. Like it's been the same. So those experiences that those not only shows have shown, but even historians are experiences that will teach us how to be smarter as we build our foundations and build our families and so on for the next generation. So, yeah, I think that's a huge point.
Yeah, I like the point about, like, it's important to know history, right? So you don't, number one, make the same mistakes, but also you gain inspiration from the stories and ideas that kind of help get you where you were in life. There is a Black Renaissance going on, and it's something that I kind of realized like earlier this year. Like, number one, there needed to be one, but there also is this is influx of Black creativity, influx in Black inspiration, content, connectivity, community building. But I also feel like it's important to reconnect with the history and, give notice and give credit to the people who paved the path for us. We wouldn't be here without those those initial shows. We wouldn't be here without the Fresh Prince.
Yeah.
I guess I mean we in a sense of terms of content and having a space. Without the Martins, without the Fresh Prince, without Cosby. Regardless of what he did.
Well, Cosby Show is iconic. You have the
Right,
different worlds, right? You have the
right,
living
right, right,
singles. So yeah, you're absolutely right. There's so many different shows that played a different role in our lives, and depending on where you were, like we were kids, but I know my parents watched some of those shows and uh, maybe even took away some of the things that they were doing in those shows to help raise us. Me and my
right,
siblings.
right,
I have three other siblings, so I definitely can see how back in those times, back in the day when those shows were and movies were kind of at the height of people tuning in every single week, people literally watching it with their families and learning from them. So
right, right. And like you brought up Fresh Prince a bit earlier, and I've kind of been just I've been watching Martin, and I've been thinking about. I feel like the classic duo, right, is like either you like Fresh Prince or Martin. Like those are like the two main comedy shows. And I realized that like Martin is the go-to show for me. And the main reason is because as a kid, although Martin was funny because of the gestures and everything that was going on, and French Prince was funny also within itself, there's like that initial limited layer of understanding because you're a child. But being older and watching Martin, I relate to it more because they're having more grown up dialogue. They're having more adult conversations. You see the different dynamics of relationships. You see the different, I think, heavier aspects of like friendships. But Fresh Prince just felt too young for me because they were in high school, I think, and then college. So I don't relate to it as much. It doesn't feel as timeless for me. But there's still value in it. There's still value in, again, it's kind of reconnecting and hearing jokes again for like hearing the same joke you heard before, but like experiencing it as an adult. Like, yo, like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yes, it's a new connection, I think, and I think having I guess again the reemergence and reliving some of these experiences, whether it be through movies, TV shows, we definitely gonna talk about music and albums because those also play a huge role in how we enjoy and live our experience. But like going back to the content that brought us here, it's influential and it's essential to I want to say setting the tone to kind of push the Black experience further. Like the root of a lot of what Black media is today kind of, I think, was shaped in like the 90s and like early 2000s. Like I said, again, there's this huge gap where content just became funneled and became reality TV based. But going back to the core, going back to the root, going back to the importance of relationships, going back to the importance of friendships, like we're living single, like you said, I think it offers a lot. It offers a lot. And I think it's important to learn from those shows. Like what would be like a modern living single? You could think of any
Girlfriends.
girlfriends. Well,
I
girlfriends was
mean,
like what, the 2000s?
yeah, that was 2000. You had Tracy Ellis Ross in the
Right,
squad.
right, right, right,
Um, yeah, there's shows out now on BET. The Tyler Perry shows, like I think one's called like Brothers or something like that. That's similar to it's like the equivalent to Girlfriends, but it's a bunch of brothers.
right,
Um, but yeah, there's a ton of different things. I was just thinking like My Wife and Kids and
right, right, right,
Blackish and all those shows that are out now. And now I really think that, and I hate to say it, but I think it has some truth. a lot of what those shows were back then have paved the way for these shows. But even now, you have like shows that are specific for Asian culture. You have shows that are specific to
Right.
Jewish culture.
Fresh
You
off
got
the boat.
shows, yeah. You have shows that are
Right.
specific to Hispanic culture, and that was, I'm obviously I was focused more so on what was happening in Black culture back then, but I'm sure some of what we're watching now has paved the way to be able to have these shows be more, I guess, socially accepted. So,
Right.
so it's great to see, these opportunities for people to share their culture. Like, the other day I saw that The Rock has his own TV show sharing his story, and it's
Yeah, like
like,
when he was a kid or something like
yeah,
that.
it's
Oh,
like
yeah,
it's
yeah.
just it's just anybody can do it now, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's a great thing for people to share stories, but just doing it in a way where it's authentic, in a way where people can relate, and that's something that's super super powerful. So
Yeah, arrogantly as it sounds, man, I think there's a reality in saying that, Black America has paved the way for culture, has paved the way for pop culture, has paved the way
for
for,
sure,
how we experience, everything, right? So like to your point of like all the new content that's out, again, without those initial pioneers paving the way, without the breakthroughs, without, and granted, there's a chance on the label side, there's a chance on the production company side and investing in these companies, but they see the benefit, and having the internet, having the ability to connect with everyone and anyone in any group. It sets the tone that everyone's voice and story deserves to be heard. But I want to hold it true that the Black experience has kind of really paved the way and set the tone, right? I mean, even like Fresh Off the Boat, like although it's about um, at least Chinese American family, like the main kid Eddie, it was Eddie Wong, who is a chef, like he's very much immersed in hip hop. So like a lot of that show is like immersed in like hip hop culture. Like he like all the guest shows, like he has like Shaq, he has like yeah, I see it, man. I see it. I see all the little nuances. You even think about Friends, like being a ripoff of like Living Single.
yeah,
Like it's all there. It's all there. The pioneer and the initial work and the initial ideas set the tone, yeah, for what culture is, I think.
yeah. I think being black and the Black experience, a lot doesn't exist without the Black experience. So
Real quick, where's your family from? Are you Black American, like African American?
I am African American. Yeah, my family is
Okay,
from. Uh, I guess my mom and my dad are from New York, but a lot of my dad's side of my family is from North Carolina and Philly, Pennsylvania area, and then
right,
my
right,
mom is Georgia, um, Augusta, Georgia. Um, so yeah, I'm Black American. I have a little bit of everything, just like we all, I feel like we all do.
right, right, right.
Native American, and so on. But yeah, my family, primarily New York and in the South. But I was gonna say, come to think of it, like when you think about how some of these newer shows kind of outline how they share, right? Because now we live in an age where you got cancel culture. You got if you not only cancel culture from a social media standpoint, but if you say the wrong thing on TV, that's being tweeted out tonight, and before
Right.
you know, it, you wake up the next day and your show's canceled. So you have all these chances you can't take. Whereas back then, and we're gonna dive to one of our favorite shows. There's some things that I've been watching as I've been rewatching the show that I'm like, wait, they let that rock?
Right, right,
Imagine if social media was out. Like, what just happened?
right, right,
So,
right, right.
so yeah, I'm excited to dive in, and obviously we'll figure out our workflow. But yeah, man, it's just funny to see what those shows did and the chances they took. Even talking about Martin, Martin took a lot of chances. Some of the things he said, I'm sure it would be crazy controversial and get him get him canceled now.
Right, right.
But
I got
yeah,
right. Sorry.
no, go ahead.
Like I was thinking about like Shanae and just like her representation, what she represents, and there's two sides to it, right? There's like the negative stereotypical Black female, that's negatively portrayed, but also like, she's real and she's dope. She's upfront. She don't take she doesn't take nonsense from anyone. She's upbeat and she has like honor and value in her work. Like, she about her business. Like there was an episode where I think like Pam tried to play her because Pam and Martin always had their
Right.
beef, and Pam trying to play her. Shanae was like, "Hold up, like I have my own business. Like you work for someone. Like like what are you really telling me?" And again, like those are like the hidden layers we don't really talk about. Like if you just look on the surface and it's like, she's this and this and this, but you really think about her lifestyle and what she represents. She's an entrepreneur. She's forward thinking, and she's I mean, I guess I want to say that there are the initial stereotype. I guess we've seen like as children, or we see initially or hear initially. Like there's always more to it, and I think that's part of this too. Like finding the different layers as adults now. Like yeah, I used to think she was just this a ghetto chick, but now like I have this whole new profound respect for her, understanding her, and like going through my own experiences as an adult and seeing that there's more to her life and what she's about.
Yeah, and full stop right there, because I think that's exactly what this podcast is going to be about, right? It's going to be us dissecting those type of dynamics and how they play a role, not only in our experience, but what we feel it plays a role in the Black experience now and Black culture now. And,
Right,
entrepreneurship back then wasn't what it is now, so now you see it
right,
differently, right? And
right,
I
right,
think
right.
that's something that when we get to that conversation and that episode, and as we dissect our episodes and break them down, we're going to be having these types of conversations, being like, hey, this is the profound effect this character has had on the culture or still having on the culture.
Right,
If you ask a person about Shanae, what are they going to give you, right? If it's the
right,
Black
right,
person compared to the white person, or the Black person compared to someone who watched Martin, right? So I think there's a lot for us to kind of unpack as we continue to create this and build this out. But you hit it right in the head. That's exactly what this podcast is going to be about. We're literally going to talk about those dynamics.
yeah. I'm excited. Like I said, I had the initial idea and didn't know where to take it. I always have initial ideas, but don't know where to kind of flow with them. Don't know what to do with them. But again, watching and having these new perspectives, like thinking about 101 and single Black dad show, like that needs to be on the forefront more, right? Like there's a whole group of Black men who are single fathers who you can connect with that story. You can understand the different layers of the experience. And granted, it's all TV. I understand it's all entertainment at the end of the day, but I think with a lot of Black media, Black content, there's always the desire to have these undertone and I guess significant messages. Like I think Blackish does that well. And I watched Blackish like the first 3 or 4 seasons when it first came out, and I stopped watching it when they were going to do an episode about Colin Kaepernick, Colin Kaepernick kneeling, and I think like the head of ABC like just told him not to do it, and then I was like, they're not really about it, right? Going back to like you said, cancel culture,
Yep.
being canceled, and all these limitations. There was more freedom in the content back in like the early '90s, 2000s. Now, like you said, you have to be careful what you say. You have to be careful of your message. So it isn't, to me, it isn't the raw and truthful Black experience. I think a lot of it is watered down. And like, I mean, I don't really consume a lot of content. I don't really watch TV that much. Investing in like this project and this podcast and watching these episodes, this is going to be like me, like really diving back into content and television shows. But
But also, let's be fair.
yeah,
I'm
I was
sorry.
going to say like it just feels like something's missing from what we're getting now. It feels like something's missing.
Yeah,
That's it.
yeah, and let's be fair. We don't want to be naive to the conversations. Martin might have had to have with the network about saying
Right.
something, right? Or Will may have had to have, or Tracy Ellis Ross. We don't know what those conversations were, and maybe we get to a point where we invite people on to tell us their side, like what it looks like because
Right.
all we see is the finished product, and we're like, yo, this person took a chance, but we don't know they could have been working on that chance for 2-3 seasons
Right.
and
Right.
had to
Right.
prove themselves and prove that this show was something that people wanted to see, audiences wanted to see before they were able to take that leap. Like that whole episode, you and I talked about with Will, and Uncle Phil and his father, right? It's a powerful episode, but who's to
Right.
say the network was like, nah, you can't do that, can't do this just yet because this may
Right.
make
Keep
people
it
feel
funny.
away.
Keep it funny.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
Yeah.
So, I'm pretty intrigued to understand like what made them take that chance. Um, and I think as we dive in today, and the show we're going to dive in today is Family Matters, right? We agree Family Matters is the show we both watch, right? I want to make sure.
I didn't think we were gonna do a full episode,
I,
full show
I
for
think we could
this.
we could definitely jump into just some of the things we've seen. Have you watched any of it? Have you checked any of it out?
I watched some of Family Matters maybe 2 years ago, and then like I did like every holiday season we kind of go through all like Christmas episodes. So I did like all the Family Matters Christmas episodes. So if that's the case, then my bad. I'm ill prepared, but
No, no,
we'll
we
still
don't have to
rock
go
out.
deeply into it. I just think that obviously I've watched pretty much the whole first season, and there are some things that stood out to me that I was so excited to share on our podcast. So we can talk about it next episode. No biggie.
No, no, let's rock out, man. I'm gonna. I it'll work through. Don't worry about it.
Okay,
Go ahead.
yeah,
What you got, man? What you
yeah. I'm
got?
just thinking, workflow wise, always kind of starting off with the intro, right? Looking at the intro of each show, whether it's music, whether if it's a jingle, whatever it may be, and Family Matters is very interesting to me because looking at the intro, you have that iconic song, you have that iconic view of the house and Chicago, and
Right, right,
it's a
right.
very interesting dynamic. But what do you remember about the intro? Because I don't want to jump into it if you like. What do you remember about it?
I mean, it felt wholesome. It felt family oriented, and like when you brought up Chicago, I was thinking about what Chicago is now versus
Exactly.
you
Yeah.
know like
Yeah.
that's again the dynamic. I'm looking at the lyrics right now. To rare condition this day and age, to read any good news on the newspaper page. Love and tradition of the grand design. Some people say it's even harder to find. Yeah, man. It's like, like,
That ain't Chicago, fam. That ain't the
right.
Chicago I know. Uh,
Like you were saying, like it's this ever present feeling of those things ain't really fixed. Things aren't really fixed.
yeah.
Like the lyrics still feel true to this day, man. Still feel true.
And I another thing that stands out in the intro is, the intro starts off with them sitting at the kitchen table, sitting down for dinner, like the whole family, and then it goes into, it shows each character, and then it goes into them bike riding over the bridge in Chicago as a family, and then it goes into them sitting in the living room on the floor with little Richie as a family, and those things are cool, and I'm sure there are families out there that are like that, but that was never in my house. Like
Right.
having Sunday dinner with my grandparents and my grandma and my parents. That was that was kind of a tradition. But other than that, I'm like they're really pushing this. And the character development was very unique. But the intro is just something I find is the draw, right? So it's what gets people to watch. You
Right.
get introduced to each character, um, and I was just blown away. I'm still like I never paid attention to it back in the day. I was just singing the song, but now that I'm looking at it for
Right.
this, I'm
Right.
like,
Right.
wait, wow, this is interesting to see it like this.
Like I watched it real quick. I'm watching it real quick on YouTube. And like, yeah, thinking about them riding about, again, going back to the idea of just like family units and being family oriented. Like you think about the first person on is Reginald. Is it Van Johnson? Let me get that
Yeah,
straight.
man. Yeah,
Reginald
Reginald.
Reginald Vell Johnson, and he's a cop, right? He's a black cop in Chicago. You think about the climate of what police is currently, and it's like, would people still, still mess with it at this current point in time? You typical nuclear family, wife, kids, they're doing well. They have a huge house, 2 floors. They got a backyard. They got, they're always doing work around the house. They have grandmother lives with them. Richie lives with them. Like,
Yeah, Rachel. She.
yeah,
So
like,
it's interesting you said that. That's a dynamic that I always remember. But after watching the first 11, 12 episodes, that's exactly not the dynamic. So like they actually struggle. The first couple of episodes, they're struggling to maintain the household. Uh, what's it's Carl Winslow and I can't think of the mother's name.
let me pull it up real quick.
So you got Carl, Eddie, Laura, uh, Rachel's the aunt. I don't know why the mom's name slipping my head right now, but I want to say Phyllis, but it ain't Phyllis. That's
Harriet Winslow, yeah.
Harriet
Joy
Winslow.
Mary Payton,
Okay,
yeah.
so it's interesting because the first couple episodes there's a challenge because Harriet lost her job and she had to find a new job, and there are things happening around the house that they can't afford, so they have to like cut back. So it's funny because I don't
Right,
remember
right,
that.
right.
I don't remember that as a kid. I remember them being this well-off family, but the
Yeah,
first season it sets it up as this family trying to figure things out. Um, so it's funny that you remember it that way because literally the grandmother does come to move in with them. Rachel's husband passes, so I believe it's Harriet's sister. Uh,
right.
she's Harriet's sister. Her husband passes away, so they move in, and it's just a very unique dynamic because Carl's very very worried about how his mother is gonna bring her control from being a mother of five to their household.
Right.
And in this day and age, it's so different. Like I look at her relationship with the family, and I think about you got grandmothers now in their 30s and 40s, especially black grandmothers.
Stressed out and working, right? And in this show, grandma is of age. Mother Winslow, she's of age. She's relaxed. She goes partying. She goes on dates. Like she's having the time of her life. And that's what it's supposed to be, right? You're supposed to put your work in your up to like your 50s or 60s, and then whatever the situation is, whether you worked hard enough where you can retire and live out in Miami or Florida, whatever, or you move in with your kids and just kind of spend time with your grandchildren. And currently, like, that dynamic is just difficult, man. It's difficult because every life has been challenging for a lot of people, right? Like going back to having being a grandmother at 40 or 30, what life have you really had? What time have you really had to kind of just live your life and kind of set things up for yourself? And now the burden kind of falls on the new generation to provide for mom, provide for grandmother. And it's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, it's you hit it right on the head. It's something that I think people, when you watch these shows, and especially nowadays, you're like, wow, I don't see that, right? I don't see
Right.
those households. Those households don't exist as much as they used to. Like I'm sure they do exist, but they're not. Like I said, there's grandmothers out there at 40.
Yeah,
So
right.
that's something that really stood out to me, as well as just the children's dynamic. One thing I didn't know is that I believe Ruby, or little Ruby, right? That's the sister, the youngest sister, or Judy. Judy's her name.
Judy,
So
yeah.
the younger sister, Judy, she was played by one character, and they switched her. So in the first episode, it was one character, and then they switched her to a
I
new
don't
character.
remember that. Hold
I
on.
don't
I
remember
don't
that
remember
either,
that.
but when you watch it, you're like, wait, what just happened? um, yeah, there's
Valerie Jones. Wow, okay.
I don't know what happened to that Judy, but if you watch the intro, she's in the intro. No matter like for the entire intro, the original Judy, and then you like catch on. You're like, wait, and those are things, subtle things I've never paid attention to. Um, so
So
yeah,
real quick, the same girl who played Judy Winslow she also played Lisa and young Hillary in The Fresh Prince of Bel Air.
really,
That's funny. Yeah,
I didn't
but
know. That's
she only has those two credits. She did Family Matters and The Fresh Prince of Bel Air. So that's I'm excited to like rewatch and see this because again, like, my perception of it is them being well off, right?
yep,
I remember Carl like doing a lot of work at home,
yep.
That was the dynamic, right? He'll be on a roof working, and then Steve comes, like, finds a way to mess things up. And like I never looked at it as like there's two layers, right? They're like dads who do everything on their own because they enjoy it. Either they can't afford it, or it's a bonding moment for like him and Eddie. So I never looked at it as them struggling with money. I just looked at it as like, hey, I'm off. This is I'm the man of the house. I'm gonna do housework with my kid. So I'm
Yeah,
excited to like rewatch that first season where they weren't as well
yeah,
off
man.
as I thought they always were.
Every episode in the first season that I've watched so far, each episode there's been a conversation about how they don't have the funds for something,
Right.
which is it's just a very interesting thing to me. And I think also what also stands out is Steve doesn't make an appearance until like episode 4, and
Right.
he's not really a regular on the show. So, I've obviously done some research, and the Steve Urkel character was introduced to bring like a new dynamic to the show, like
Right.
a funnier, fun dynamic to the show. So they kind of introduced him slowly. They gave him kind of a segment here, segment there. Never like introduced him as far as like who he is. So there's a couple of segments he's in, and you're like, who the hell is this guy? You have no idea who he
Right.
is. But because I'm a fan of the show, I'm like, Steve makes the show, right? Like from what we
Right.
know,
Right.
there's no Family Matters without Steve Urkel, right?
Yeah.
Um, so his kind of first introduction to the show is him getting on Carl's nerves. He comes to do something, he gets on Carl's nerves, and Carl's like, Steve, what are you doing? Type thing, and then they go, and then that's it.
Right.
You don't see him again for another like 2-3 episodes. So
It's like I guess again rethinking about it. Maybe they had an original concept for the show, right? It was just like, talking about the black spirit, and maybe it was like maybe they wanted to do like initially a raw, rugged Chicago story, right? Like struggling, but then it was like nobody wants to hear this. People want to laugh, you want to have fun. The world is already depressing as it is for some people. We don't want that dynamic. So I guess maybe that's part of the introduction to Steve, and just changing course into just making it more comedy based. And granted, they've always had like real and raw conversations. And I'm
yep.
thinking about that police episode, but that's something we can jump in like in the next episode once I catch up.
Yeah, it's the show is watching it now in my 30s. It's there's a lot of things that happen that frustrate me. That I'm like somewhat offended by. Whereas as a kid, I just took it at face value for
Really?
what it was. Yeah, man. Like the relationship that Eddie has with the family kind of really bothers me. Eddie's kind of like this jock who is looked at as an idiot. He literally is looked like every episode he does, he
Right,
says
right, right,
something
right,
that's
right,
really
right, right.
stupid. And then later on in the season they have an episode with him and Carl kind of have a heart to heart, and Carl kind of tells him like, you're not stupid, you just do things a little bit different, which I thought
Right,
was
right,
nice. But he still does the stupid things after the episode. So it's like, you know his they make Laura the geek and the smart one, and they make Eddie
right,
the
right, right.
the jock and the idiot, and they actually like use the word stupid, and there's actually a part where this is hilarious. He's like peeping Toming someone, like he's in the attic and he's using binoculars looking at like a girl, and Carl catches him, and then Carl gets the binoculars and looks, and he's like, oh, and it's just like, bro, if that was today, the show would be
Right,
canceled, right?
right, right.
So it
But
just
go ahead. Sorry.
no, I was just saying it's just funny. That kind of hurt me a little bit, because as a black boy looking at that, I'm like, yo, Eddie could be so much more, and there's more dynamics to it where they do a better job in character development. But this first season, there was less about learning about Laura and Judy, and more focus on Eddie and Carl's dynamic.
Right, right.
But Eddie just seemed, they look at him like he's a klutz, like he's just this dummy, and that kind of
I'm
bothers me a
try-
little bit.
I'm trying to think of I guess the white shows that I've watched, and I always want to do like a comparison to kind of see if maybe that's just the standard. I feel like that's part of like TV formula, right? Like, I'm trying to think of smart TV sons, and like or maybe like dumb TV daughters. But I mostly can only think of like villains like Waldo being like
Yeah.
kind of slow, or I'm thinking of like Kimmy Gibbler kind of being kind of slow. Like the neighbor's kid or the
But
best
even
friend is usually
Carlton, right?
kind of slow, huh?
Carlton's
Right.
aren't really slow, but he's different. So he
He
was looked at,
goofy.
yeah. And it is what it
And
is.
Will wasn't that smart. I don't think Will was that smart, was he?
Will
The
wasn't
first
that
Mr.
smart, but
Miyagi?
it was more so street smarts versus,
Right,
this
right, right, right,
privileged upbringing.
right,
But yeah, it just, to your point, I think there's a lot that stands out that we just never realized. And
right.
as the show went on, they introduced other characters and other dynamics, so it makes sense. But watching the first season, I'm like, the men are looked at like idiots. Like Carl's looked at like an idiot. Some of the stuff he does, Harry's just calling him out, and he's like trying to be a good husband, and he's trying to be a good
Right.
father, and he's getting called out. He's like he to your point, he's like, oh, I want to fix this, and Harry's like, you can't do that. Like you don't have a bone, that type of bone in your body, and he's like, I can do this, and then he totally fails. He totally
Right,
fails
right,
at it,
right, right.
and then he's trying to make it up to the family, and it bothers me a little bit. I understand that, and this show I think started in like the early '90s, so I don't know what big movements were happening then, but I understand the importance of highlighting, black women, or the strength of a mom, but some of the stuff
At
they
what
do,
cost,
yeah, some of the
right?
stuff they was doing to Carl, I'm just like, man, why are they doing this to this poor guy? Why is he going through this?
Right.
So
So it started 1989.
yeah,
Let me see when the first episode was, if I could find that. But I feel like that's kind of the climate. I mean, it's interesting even hearing that, like thinking about. So the first episode was September 19th. Oh, that's wrong. Sorry. First episode was September 22nd, 1989.
okay,
Cool. I think I just turned four the day before. It's interesting thinking about the climate of husband wife relationships now, because I feel like in television show, like the push to empower more women,
yep,
and through that you see like men just being treated like they're morons. Like I think of Blackish. I think of. Have you seen Black as Fuck?
no,
Okay.
that's like a
It's
Netflix
about,
special, right?
yeah, it's on Netflix.
Yeah,
It's with Rashida Jones and Kenyon Barris,
yeah, I
who
saw the
I think
preview.
he wrote Blackish and all the other ish shows. But like, there's this dynamic where the the providers, the breadwinners, the men of the household just aren't respected, right? Like going back to your point about Carl, like treating him like he's an idiot. Who cares if he doesn't know how to do it? Let the man try, and if he fails, he'll pay for it. He'll pay for it.
Yeah,
But it's God, like I'm even thinking about it now, like maybe that's part of the conditioning, like going back to Eddie being kind of slow, going back to the way Carl was treated for wanting to do things on his own. It's just like I don't know. It feels like it feels like it's just some type of signaling and some type
yeah,
of
absolutely.
conditioning, and I guess where we are now in terms of just balancing out responsibilities, understanding respect, and on both fronts. Not saying that it needs to be one sided, but I think respect is respect, and I understand the comical aspect to it, but the language has impact, man. The language has lasting
Absolutely.
impact on people. Yeah.
Yeah. And then also Carl whines a lot, bro. He whines to me in every episode. He's whining about something, and I'm like, bro, like, you got to man up, bro. Like, this, you're a grown man. Literally, the first episode, he's complaining probably like 80% episode about his mom, about how she's gonna do this and do that, and Harry, you don't understand, and da da da. And it's like I don't know why they made him out to be such a whiner. Like it's very interesting to me why they did that. And you look at he talks a little bit about his brothers and how one of his brothers makes more money than him, and the other one of his brothers that does this and does that. And even his mom, she kind of treats him like a baby. So there's a whole episode about her treating him like a baby and him finally becoming a man.
Right.
And but this guy got kids in high school. Like this conversation should have happened when he had his first kid. Like what is happening? So I don't know what focus groups were doing in the late '80s, but the show did really well. And I'm looking at, like I said, watching it now. I'm learning a ton. Um, And
Do
like I
you
said,
feel that? Go ahead.
no, I was like I said, I'm up to episode like 11 or 12. Not too many Steve sightings, but Laura's character development doesn't exist. So you don't hear much about Laura. She has little segments here and there, but most
Right.
of her segments are literally dogging Eddie about how stupid he is. Um, and then Eddie's character development is a little more, but it's just more so like he's a klutz. He's an idiot. He's stupid.
Right.
Eddie should play basketball. Eddie should do this. Eddie should do that. But what does Eddie want to do? And
Right.
I love the Harriet dynamic. I love the mother Winslow. That's great.
Right. Right.
But
Right.
but the men, I don't know. It's just something strange happening with them. So yeah.
I forgot what I was going to ask initially. So after like Carl stepped up and became a man, man, quote unquote, do you feel like his character development changed, or do you feel
No.
like he was still a bit whiny?
Yeah,
So
he's still. I feel like like I said on my episode, I think 11 or 12, and it's 22 episodes in the first season, and he's still almost every single episode. There's a part where he just whines, like he has a moment where he's upset, or someone says something, or he's like, I was gonna do this, but I can't do that, and he's chastised a lot by the women, by all the women. There was even a part where Laura just kind of chastised him, like, and it was just weird to me. I'm like, yo, this, if that was me, I'd
your
be
own
like,
daughter,
yeah, like it wasn't like malicious, it was in a funny way,
right,
but he said he was going to do something, and she was like, no, Dad, you can't do that, and he was like, yeah, I can't. Like, it was just, that happens for whatever reason a lot in this, first season, and I don't know how many seasons they did, and you probably can tell me, but
yeah,
I'm sure like later on in the show, it's probably gotten to your point. The development of the character probably changed a lot, but even Steve, to me, like the third sighting of Steve is him taking out the trash because he doesn't want Laura to touch garbage. Just crazy to me. Like Harriet is handing Laura the garbage, and Steve jumps in. He's like, "You can't touch the hands of a queen can't touch garbage." It's ridiculous. Like in my mind, women at that age. And I don't know what the scientific kind of, if there are studies on this, but
right, right,
the issue that I might have with dating over the years I've had, and I'm a single guy, with dating over the years may have come from shows like that. Women watching dudes telling them they can't take out the garbage because society is like,
right,
the man
right,
takes
right,
out the
right.
garbage, the man takes out the garbage. And Steve literally drops his briefcase. Like, he drops it on the floor, he gets in front of it, he picks up the garbage, and then he trips over the briefcase to take out the garbage. And it's just like, what? This is crazy. Like, Laura's
Oh
cool.
man,
I know he likes her,
right,
but
right, right,
come on,
right.
man. So it is what it is.
This is going to be an interesting rewatch now. Like, and I guess part of me is glad. Well, I'm not glad. I'm happy to kind of get your insight on it and like watch it and look out for these things now. Because now I'm thinking about again the whole dynamic and the whole conditioning aspect. To your point of, it's fall in line. Like, women do this, men do this, but also, the Steve's continual. I use the word simping, like
Yeah.
just, and I get it, man, but it's sad though. Like, really thinking about the later episodes and thinking about as much as Steve has like propelled Laura into this state, this keeps chasing her, keeps stalking her, keeps harassing her. He always goes overboard, and then he gets sad, he walks out, and then they resolve the issue.
Yeah.
And what does that do for like what is that teaching young men, right? In terms of like self-esteem and self-worth, like keep trying, keep trying until you get it.
But he eventually
Thinking
gets
about
it.
him being Stefan, yeah, but like season 5,
And then he has to
like,
go through the dynamic changes. She's the one chasing him now.
right?
And it's
Is
more,
this when he's Stefan or when he's still Urkel?
I'm pretty sure she starts chasing him when he's Stefan, but then she understands the dynamic of who Steve Urkel is. Stefan, they're the same person. So then she finally accepts Steve for Steve, and then they live happily ever after type shit. But it's I lost my train. Oh no, what I was gonna say, it's interesting how, and I forgot I left this out from the intro, how they during the intro each character is like doing something different, right? So Carl's walking down the stairs, Harriet's like setting up some flowers, Laura has a Walkman, Eddie's at the grocery store working, But the thing that blows my mind is if you rewatch it, Grandma's reading a Rolling Stone magazine, a Rolling Stones magazine with U2 on it, like the
I
group
see it. I
U2.
see it.
And it
Yeah,
just blows my mind. Like, why grandma not reading Ebony? Why grandma not reading? Like, it just, I'm like, you, like, Rolling Stone is cool, but, like, what happened? Like,
why not? Right? And
why
where's
not?
where's Ebony magazine now compared to like where Rolling Stone is? Right? Like, yeah, I get it. I get it,
It just
man.
did. So
All the little things do matter. You're right.
I never
You're
paid
right.
attention to it before, but I'm like, why? Grandma's into Rolling Stone. She never talks about music. She never talks about, like, she has some conversations, but I just thought to myself, like, this typical black family in the inner city of Chicago or the suburb, because they
Well,
showed the
not
suburb.
typical.
What I'm talking about back then, though, to them it was,
Okay. Okay.
that's why they built the show. Like, to us, we as we stated, like, we're like, what? This ain't Chicago,
Like
the
what?
Chicago we know.
Together. Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but grandma reading Rolling Stone magazine, like, that was just something that was very interesting to me when I thought it was going to change. So every episode I'm waiting for it to change, and I'm like, nah,
Still the same.
they're not giving her Ebony. She ain't get Ebony back. So
Yeah, I think the preview I'm watching is like a later one. 'Cause they got like Richie in it already, but
no, Richie's in
whatever.
he's in the first one.
Richie's in the first season too.
Yeah, he's in the first season.
Okay.
It's funny because I take notes for every episode. Literally, the question I ask is, "Where's Richie?" Like, the whole family will be eating dinner. Richie's not there. I'm like, what? Did they just leave Richie in the crib? Like they'll do stuff together, and he's just not there. They're like, "What happened to Richie? Where's Richie?"
I get it. Just didn't make sense to like plug him in, I guess. But I get that. I get that. And this one I'm watching, Eddie's like fixing a car. So like,
Yeah, it's a later
you know,
one.
he has his spaces, right? He has his, he develops into having spaces where he can, like, to your point, excel. Like, you know, he may not be book smart, but you know, maybe he's a mechanic. Maybe he knows how to fix cars. Like, that's something within itself, right?
Yeah, and also he's always talking about girls. Everything he talks about, women, girls, 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 girls. Like, it's like he's infatuated with girls. And I understand when you're in high school. When I was in high school, I was digging girls, but I ain't talking about them the way Eddie be talking about. Like, Eddie, every single day, man. Like, this guy's girl this, girl that, girl this, girl that, and it just, when I think back to the early '90s, maybe that's what high school were like. I didn't go to high school till 2000, so
I mean, I think there's a bit of exaggeration, right? Like, like he gets cast type. That's the phrase. I said this earlier, yeah. And that's just his phrase. He's a jock, right? All jocks are obsessed with girls. Obsessed with sports, and that's all it is, right?
Yeah, it's
yeah. He has his wingman, who he's only a bit smarter than his wingman, but it helps give him his little ego boost, right? Like, I may not be that bright, but I'm not Waldo, so
yeah. And then who was Laura's? I forgot Laura's best friend when she. Forgot the girl came in. She did. She had some light skinned girl. I forgot her name.
So some light skinned girl.
Yeah, some light skinned
what is that? What does that mean for you? Some light skinned girl.
Her skin was light. Like, I don't know. I forgot her name. It was maybe Nikki. Maybe no. Nikki was. I haven't. I'm sure she shows up in later seasons, but the girl always had a crush on Eddie.
Maxine Johnson, maybe. Was it Maxine?
That sounds about right. I have to look it up. And it just was the type of thing that I always thought, Eddie could have been so much more. Like, they could have.
Nah, Maxine was who Waldo was dating, wasn't it?
Maybe it was Waldo. So maybe it was Maxine.
She was the equivalent of what Waldo was. It's kind of slow in the show.
Yeah, Maxine. Yep, that's it.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure she was Laura's best friend. Her and Laura, like, cool. And they, obviously later on in the
yeah, you're right. She is the best friend.
Yeah, in the series, she was always with Laura. Waldo was always with Eddie. Steve was like in between. I don't really remember Judy much. I think her character kind of phased out later on in the seasons. But
they started focusing on Richie. I feel a bit more.
Yeah, Richie got older, and Richie was great. His little comic relief, and he was great. As he got into a toddler and 6, 7, 8 years old, it was cool. He had little segments. I remember him doing segments with Steve, and them having their moments.
Right.
So yeah,
I feel like he was. I feel like Richie was maybe not smarter, but like he had more game. Was it maybe more than Steve? I think like sometimes he'd be like, "It's
Yeah,
okay, Steve," and like he'll pat him,
yeah.
like he'd son him basically, like it's okay,
He
I
would
got
give
this,
Steve tips.
yeah.
Yeah, he give him tips. Yeah, he was just a smart kid, man. Um, yeah, and I look at even working back then and the type of jobs. Um, which another thing that just doesn't make sense to me is Carl was a cop, and I didn't know Harriet went to the police academy. So she was an administrative assistant at
I
the
don't remember that.
yeah
Wow, I don't
she was
remember
an
that.
administrative assistant at the police department, and then she got a job as an elevator operator. So in my
I
mind, I'm
remember that
like,
the elevator operator job.
well, why wasn't she an officer, right? Why didn't she do other things in the police department? Obviously, thinking about it, I'm overthinking it as someone who's watching the show. But it's just
Right,
like if I went to the police academy, I probably would want to get a job as a cop.
right, right.
um, and for whatever reason, that's the title and job they gave her. So she ended up becoming like the manager of. She became a head manager of like a department at the place where she was the elevator operator. She went on an interview and got that job because Carl was like, "You can do it." He was. That's the thing. Carl's always like super supportive of her, and then on the flip side,
Right.
she's like, "You can't do this."
Right, right, right,
It just
right,
cracks
right.
me up. So funny.
Yeah. So, 87, Harriet Winslow was working as an elevator operator in the Chicago Chronicle. She was fired in 1989 when she asked for a raise,
Because Carl told her to ask for a raise.
and they did a self service elevator.
Yep.
And she got a job as a director of security officer
Security.
for the
That was it.
Chronicle. Yeah, yeah. I guess I'm thinking about maybe, and I just read that from the Family Matters fandom wiki page. I guess it kind of goes back to the gender dynamics, like not having women touch garbage, women can't be cops, and just more of the nonsense and layer, and maybe added a bit more drama than I guess the producers or writers wanted or needed for the show.
Yeah, Rachel. What does Rachel do? When I
Right
was
on the
watching,
spot.
she literally is a writer. Supposedly, she's a writer, and she's writing a novel and writing magazines, and she's just doing all this writing. But it just doesn't make sense. Like it's like if I was Carl, I'd be like, "Yo, when you moving out?" like
Why though? Why?
why? Because she's a widow who has a child who and that's what I mean. How the dynamic has changed because you think about back in those days. I remember even with my family where there'd be 10, 15 people in a house. If the house had enough rooms, everybody's welcome, right? And that's
Right, right,
beautiful.
right.
But I think nowadays she gotta get her own place. we gotta help her, we gotta help her get her own place. She can't be staying here.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
um, yeah, go ahead.
Real quick, it's interesting thinking about again, thinking about past and present in the past, family dynamics. Everyone and anyone is allowed to kind of be there and live there. And to your point that you don't agree with for as long as you want. And now, I feel like on one aspect, that really isn't the case, right? But I think more importantly, it's like like there's like this emergence of it's like communal living, or like random people just kind of live in shared spaces together
Yeah.
and kind of create their new family dynamic, right? And I feel like the majority of that is white people. So I'm just thinking about the differences, right? And like what the black experience was and what it what again I guess what it represented in terms of family, in terms of community, and how close knit things were back in I guess that era. And so what it is now, there's this the belief that the black home has been divided, the divisiveness, while you see other groups reemerging into the aspect of community and just being together and being open to live together.
So I,
But
I have a question for
just
you.
not for you. Yeah, yeah.
So do you feel like because you and I shared when we first jumped on this, where our families are from, right? And I think you would think that the Winslows were a Black American family,
Right.
right? They don't really talk about their family being, especially in these first couple episodes I've watched, where exactly the family's from. But let's say the family is from Jamaica. let's say,
Right.
or the Caribbean, not just Jamaica, but from the Caribbean, then what would the show look like then, right? Or let's say the family is from the South, like we don't know, maybe they're from the South. What does that dynamic look like? And um, that's something I feel like would be cool if it was announced, like, hey, our family's from here, our family's from there. I don't
Right.
think I've seen that so far, but what do you think if that was the case?
So I like this. Hold on. So I think that it would be the same dynamic. Thinking about West Indian household, like growing up, like not growing up, like looking at pictures of my family before like I became like a toddler. They were like we lived in a one bedroom apartment. There were like seven people living there. We had couches and everything, and that's just what the dynamic was. Because on one aspect, there's your family immigrating here from whatever country. So, they set up shop and y'all live together for as long as you want to and need to. So I definitely think that's still that's part of what the Black experience is and was. I think like this new dynamic of, kicking kids out when they're certain age or telling people that they need to leave and find their own place. I'm not used to that experience. My experience has always been love and taking people in. My mother took him, brought my grandfather here. He lived with us until, his last days. She took my cousin in. And I think a lot of my friends, just mostly West Indian friends, they had that same dynamic where it was just like, yeah, we all live here for as long as as long as we need to. And then when time is up, we go our separate ways. And even now, like I think about like my mother's neighborhood, a lot of adults just either, they live in their parents' basement or they're still in their parents' home waiting for things to kind of hit off or change for themselves. But I think there's been a cultural shift in wanting to just have your own and be out on your own. And I mean, even for myself, right? Like once I had some money, I moved out. I said, all right, like I need my own space. I need to be out and about on my own because I want to experience life. I want to be more independent. And others like, wow, why would you do that? Like, you don't have a family, you don't need to do all that. But I think that's part of the American experience. And I think that's part of being in the American culture. It's just the desire is to kind of step out and just kind of do your own when you don't necessarily need to. So yeah, I think it would have been the same dynamic. I think it would have been the same
Well,
dynamic, but I think there's been a cultural shift to again break up and divide households so that people aren't living in mass groups in their homes anymore.
yeah, well, let's dive a little bit deeper because I think uh, I want to be a little more specific. In my
Right,
experience, my friends that come from a West Indian family, a lot of times when you have that one child that he or she may be on the spectrum of autism, or they may have some special needs. That a lot of times those parents, for whatever reason, don't want to believe it, right? Or they don't. They live in it. They kind of push it out the way, and they're like, my son is still can do this, still can accomplish that. And then
right, right,
in
right,
a lot of cases, they do. They still find a way to make it and accomplish things. And I think looking at it from specifically family matters, you don't see the Winslows really pushing their kids, or even I'm just on Eddie because Eddie just gets the brunt of it, but pushing
right,
Eddie pushing Eddie to kind of strive to be great, or to there's nothing wrong with Eddie. Let's you can still accomplish these things. Um,
right.
and that's something that I feel like in maybe in your experience it's been different, but I think that's from a West Indian household compared to an American household. I definitely see that being something that's different.
Right, right, right. I mean, I think part of it, and this is just like me processing the difference in experiences is, you know, my mother came here from Haiti, right? There was a desire to kind of want more for her life and do more for her life. So there's this innate desire to achieve more than, what the surface of the life experience is. And for me, being a first generation American, I don't have the view of just like, all right, cool, I'm in America, I'm settled, like I made it. for my mother, that's what that was. She made it here. She did what she needed to. She retired. She's good. But for me, it's like I had two options, right? I could have just been like, I'm here in America, right? Let me do the standard thing that people do, right? For her, it's be a dentist, be a doctor. Like growing up, I wanted to be a dentist, right? And that made her happy. She loved telling people that. Once I changed careers, it's like, what are you doing? Why don't you go back to school? Why don't you go back to school? Why don't you go back to school? She called me like 2 months ago crying. She's like, because she saw like this black doctor on TV, and she said, "When I saw him, I saw you. Why don't you go back to school?" And I'm like, "Damn, it's heavy on one aspect, but the other side is, I wanna live above the status quo. I didn't make it yet. I'm here, but that don't mean I made it because I'm aware of the black experience. I'm aware of what black history has been, and I know there's so much more to do instead of just doing the surface work. So I think I guess again for the West Indian aspect, there's more of a desire to kind of go against the status quo and push further. When I look at like a lot of I use the general phrase, I guess people who have just kind of accepted the American lifestyle, whether they're West Indian or African American. It's just doing what you do, right? You go to school, you get a job, and that's it. And life is good. Life pans out. You got money to pay bills. You got money to do what you want and need to. But I think it's really just tied into like American conditioning and wanting people to just be part of the system. Like you're a creative, I'm a creative, right? At some point, we both decided like I want more from life. I want more. I want to do more. I want to innovate. I want to create, and I want to put my ideas out there. I want to, like, for you, it's connecting with people. For me, it's having people just most like mental health related, having people believe in themselves more. Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that because I think when you look at where we are as a people now, those shows, or even
We as in
media,
black people,
black
just to
people,
specify.
yeah,
Okay.
we as in black people, or matter of fact, no, we as a people, as far as I guess as citizens of the world or United States, the media we consume, like whatever that media is and how it looks, is still to me has kind of a I don't know the word to use, but it's very similar to what it was, back in the '90s, back in the '80s, right? The newer shows, I feel like, and I don't watch many of them, but the ones I've seen, I don't see them talking about entrepreneurship the way we talk about it, right? I don't see them talking
All right.
about yeah, we're in a phase where everything is focused around social injustice. So you see some of that. You see like little hints of it in shows, but it's not. It's here, like you said, with Blackish. It's not happening on a scale that it should, right? And I think back then, when being someone who looked up to what was happening in family, like it's all in the name. Family matters,
Right, right,
right?
right. Like really
Like
just think about that. Family, period, right? Like period, period. The show isn't Family Matters. The show is Family Matters. Like literally, right? I like
right,
that.
all in the
I like
name.
that.
But when you look
Right,
at
right,
that, you're
right.
like, wow, look at this dynamic and look what this family is going through or has gone through. But that ain't me. That's not my family.
Right, right,
I wish it was like that. I wish that me and my dad could go and work on the bathroom, but we rent from, we have a landlord here, and we don't own this
right,
home,
right,
right? And obviously there are people who own their homes, but the point I'm trying to make is that everything that you're saying has a huge, or it takes away from everything that we were seeing and that we see. Um, and yes, our parents want us to have a specific lifestyle, or they want us to have things that they've never had because they've experienced it differently. But what we're consuming on TV, that's not always the case. We're not seeing that,
right,
and
right,
it just very interesting with how uh, and we'll jump into other shows as well when the time comes and other content. But Family Matters is just funny dynamic with all this happening. So
yeah. Like and like to that point, this TV spoiled my brain growing up, man. And I think it has for a lot of us. And I think one of the most important steps for anyone is just realizing that, it's not real, man. It's not real. It's not real. It's all entertainment. Like, on TV, everything gets resolved, right? Within that 30-minute episode, right? Everything gets resolved. And the issues from last week aren't this week's issues, right? We're on a whole new topic. All of that has been resolved, and it's not reality. It's not the world we live in. So watching that as a kid and always thinking that, all right, well, if they, things get resolved day of, right? Every single show, things are going to get resolved the moment of or within a time span. Going back to the play on words, family matters, right? Like nothing gets resolved if the focus isn't family, right? And not even necessarily this blood family. And I think that's also important when you think about like Steve's role in the show, right? He isn't blood family, but he's family because he's with them. He's been through it all with them. And whenever, like I brought it earlier, like he goes a bit too far and, he leaves sad and the audience goes, oh, he comes back and they resolve it. And they show you that at the end of the day, and this is something that I've realized that, communication is all that matters, man. As long as you communicate, as long as everyone's communicating and kind of being honest about, their position and, why they did the things that they did and trying to, I guess, balance out each other's personalities. Yeah, family matters in terms of healing. Family matters in terms of finding who you are and who you want to be. I was thinking about, like, you talked about Eddie earlier, and, there's no, like you said, there's no desire to push him and be like, yo, Eddie, you can be this, you can be that. And it's like, nah, like, yo, Eddie, man, you're going to figure it out. You're going to figure it out and you're going to be okay. And even if you aren't, guess what? Family got you because family matters. Yeah. Like, I think that's the dynamic of it. Yeah.
Yeah, bro. This conversation has been powerful because I've learned so much about the show that I didn't really look at before. And I think that sums it all up. Family matters. And Steve, I even remember episodes where Steve has problems with his real family, and Carl
right.
talks some sense in him. And he sits down with Carl, and Carl's like, Steve, you can do this, you can do that. And that's a great point. Like, no matter who it is that came in their space, they treated them like family. And, as the show continued to develop and other characters were introduced, like Myra is Steve's girlfriend.
Right.
And it just other characters, they always show love. There was a little animosity at times and a little bit of divide, but then they would figure it out. And that's a great point. I never really looked at it that way. So this has been great, man. I'm really excited for us to continue to dive into the other content that we're going to be talking about.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm going to play catch up, and I guess what you want to try to finish season 1 for the next episode, or like season 1 and part of season 2.
Yeah. I think it would be great to hear your perspective once you have an opportunity to dive in. Like I have notes. I take notes every single episode and just pull out different things that I see that I want to discuss with you. So I think maybe finishing season 1 is 22 episodes. So finishing season 1, episodes are about 20 to 23 minutes. So not very long. So yeah, if you're open to it. And I also think just having, as we continue our conversations, having an order, right? Like maybe starting off with what the intro means to us and then talking about some character development and then diving into maybe two or three things we noticed that is impactful to culture or impactful to where we are now. I think us sharing where we are and our experiences it's been really dope. Like I'm really like presently surprised by this combo. It's been dope. So yeah, that's cool.
It's been fun. It's definitely been dope and unraveling. Like I said, even though I didn't watch it, like I know I can pull from memory, and I know you'd offer good points for me to kind of piggyback. And it was. I'm glad this first episode is ended up the way it is, man.
Yeah, for sure. And I definitely will. Obviously we'll continue to talk about what we're going to watch and what we want to connect on, but anything that we talk about, I definitely want to watch it beforehand because it's giving me a different eye. Not only watching it as an adult, but watching it as someone who's going to be talking about it. And I'm sure you echo this. We want anyone who listens to this to get value from it and to be able to relate. This is why we want to have these conversations, because we really believe that there's so much that we've learned through those experiences and what these networks are showing us, but we just don't see anybody talking about it. And
Right.
not only networks, but producers and writers, and you have directors, and not only from a TV show standpoint, but from a movie standpoint. Not only from a movie standpoint, from an album standpoint, right?
Right.
I'm sure there are artists who put certain songs on their albums because of the times we live in, right?
Right.
Um,
And they get lost because you only focus on the singles, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
there's so much to unpack, and this has been done. I'm just I'm just excited to. I could talk about it for hours, but obviously we want to make
Right.
sure we
Right.
have an
Right.
episode. So
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, even thinking about, I mean, just to wrap up real quick, like thinking about the Family Matters episode, like the language again, right? Just focusing on language, Family Matters, and what does that mean? That anyone who steps through that door, you have like I have a maybe like a not a policy, but like my base belief is that if we sit down and break bread together, we family, right? And I can't do any ill malicious harm to you. Like to me, breaking bread with people is important. Like it's powerful. So now we're doing podcasts, and now we're breaking bread over podcast, and to whoever's listening, and we want you to watch the shows, give us feedback. Down the line, we'll be taking suggestions on shows. Also considering doing Clubhouse episodes, like maybe once a month, just to kind of recap and have more dialogue and conversation with other people who have watched the shows and who have new perspectives. But yeah, until then, episode 1 wrap up. I'm your host, Clifford Janice. You can find me on IG at Gold's Conditioning, or this IG Gold's Conditioning is good. Yeah.
yeah, I'm Thomas C. Knox. I'm also on IG under the Connection Curator. Just to note, and Cliff and I will kind of dive in and figure out what we want to work here. But at some point, we will have a way for you guys to connect with us. If it's a specific IG account, so keep a lookout for that, because that's something that's coming as well.
Yeah. All right, man. Until next time. Peace.
Yes, sir.